You're listening to Exposure on Radio X. I'm John Kennedy, and that is Mike D with Switch Up. It's the opening track to the album Thank You, which has just come out, and I'm very pleased to say that Mike D is here to tell us all about it. Hello, Mike.
Hello there.
It's great to have you here. So it's Mike D 5D. Is that just for the live setup, or is that...
Yeah, good question. It's confusing because originally I was just like, all right, I'd made the decision like it's 2026. I'm not like originally I was like, oh, do I come up with a band name? Do I think of something really, as the British would say, cheeky or clever? But I was like, all right, you know what? Nobody has enough time. Like I'm just going to be Mike D because still people there might be the case that I'll put the record out and no one will notice anyway. So even under the name, the esteemed name,
yes,
Mike D. So I decided to go with that. But then, and then I was like, well, do I call the project 5D? But then we started actually, like with some of the musicians I got together with for the tour, we started rehearsing, and you know, it just kind of took a life of its own. I was like, wait, this is the 5D. So I was kind of like, that's where we're at.
Yeah. Because I've seen various different permutations, and I was just trying to work out. But ultimately, for most people, it'll be Mike D of Beastie Boys fame, and that's how they'll bracket you. But it's a good place to be starting from. When you were thinking about recording again and putting new music out there, where did you start, and when did you start thinking in those terms?
Yeah, good. I guess it was sort of like a couple of years ago that I really started on the project in earnest. And the very first sessions came about because these friends of ours who live around the corner from where I share a studio in California with my two sons, Davis and Skylar. And so they're these close friends of ours. They have he's a record producer and she's a music film composer. And so they had just had a baby, and they both were used to working all the time. So they were like, well, we don't know what to do. We have a baby. We're not supposed to work, but like we kind of want to make music. Do you guys want to come over and we'll just start making stuff? So we just go, we're like, oh yeah, sure. We go over around the corner, we go to their place, and it was like kind of a Brian Eno-like premise where it was like everybody was on an instrument that you don't know that well. Like I think maybe the first thing I was playing was like I think I was on Teenage Engineering OP1, or then I was on this like Kritar. You know, there's this like I don't know if you'd call it a synth. It's like organ and Kritari. You ever seen one of these things?
No, I haven't.
They have like these little round buttons, and then there's like a screen where you can scroll through, and there's loads of different sound banks and some different built-in effects and stuff on it. Anyway, but it was like basically the premise was like everybody's on something that they're not really that familiar with making music with. And then we started to record, and we were recording to 4-track cassette. And then I really loved the way that sounded. But thankfully we were also going into the computer, because as we started to work on the 4-track cassette started to get eaten by the machine.
Yeah,
and
as they
then
do.
I remembered why I stopped using cassettes.
This is it. It's interesting going back to that old technology and maybe having some nice nostalgic thoughts about it and thinking, hey, this is so exciting when we had cassettes. And then when they start to mess up, you realize that's why we moved on.
Yeah, there is a reason. But I do still love the sound. Like there is a thing of the cassette compression is real, and I do constantly, actually my kids are really good about it. They're constantly isolating things and then running it through the cassette and then back in. That's like something we do pretty regularly.
So this was a playful session with your friends. Yeah,
so it was that with no zero desired outcome, zero intention in terms of putting anything out into the world or anything. So we did that, and then months later, I started to work on some vocals for it. But actually, I shouldn't say work. I was with my kids, and we were in this beautiful house in Big Sur that someone had lent us that had a studio in it, and we would surf in the morning and get coffee, and then we really didn't have anything else to do during the day. So I was like, all right, I may as well just start trying to do some vocals over some of the songs that we did. And like anything, it was still, it's not like any of those vocals or actually any of those songs that I was working on then, none of those made the record, but that was like the start. And then later, it was a bunch of months later on, I was in France. Actually, I was surfing with a friend of mine, and it was like one of those beautiful days. We'd gone surfing, and then she'd played me. She was playing. We were in her car, and she was playing the Gina Birch. Was it? I Play My Bass Loud.
Yeah.
Is that the name
Yeah.
of the record?
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
playing that record, and I was like, well, and growing up, I was a huge I was like a very big Raincoats fan. So I'm not even sure why, but I went around like age like 14 or something. I really loved the Raincoats. So I was amazed. I really liked the record, the Gina Birch record. And then I was just like, well, what am I doing? Like, I just had this sort of like moment where I was like, all right, she can do it. She's got to be older than me. Like, what am I doing? Like, I need to get on it. And then I rang up my two kids. I was like, look, what's going on? I'll be back in a couple weeks. What's going on in the studio? Can I kind of like book it out for a couple weeks? And they're like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. And then I called up a few musician friends, and we just kind of like scheduled some sessions, and that was the start of it.
Yeah, so
or
it's
more in earnest, the start of it.
Yeah, kind of a green light and a light bulb moment where you thought, hang on a minute, this is fun. I like doing this, and why aren't I doing this?
Yeah, and then once I started doing it, it was more real in a bunch of different ways. But one of the ways was that, like, then I don't know, I kind of just had this feeling of like, wow, this is absolutely what I'm supposed to be doing, or I just felt like a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more whole. And that's not to say that I didn't then also have a gazillion moments of momentary, wait, what's the plural form of crisis? Crises?
Crises, maybe?
Is crises?
Crises, I think, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. No,
I had whatever the plural of crisis is. I had a lot of those.
Yeah.
Crises.
Yeah. I love the idea that Gina's records could inspire you to think, yes, I can have a go as well, in a way that they probably did when you were 14, when you first encountered the Raincoats.
Yeah, sure. It's funny.
Because there was
like
a kind of very much a DIY approach. And Gina Birch and band have actually performed in this very room that we're speaking in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a few
Wait,
years
how'd
ago.
they all fit in?
Well, we managed to make it work, yeah. They haven't come back to do a second session, but they did it once, and it was very exciting. And
cool.
There's a great kind of joie de vivre, for want of a better phrase, to what she does and how she approaches things. I think maybe you share.
I think so.
And you can hear that in Switch Up, which we just heard. But I think it's right that I play It's Time now, because it seems as if, that phrase, it's time to get back recording and making music, seemed to be pertinent after those two experiences. So we'll listen to that. It's another selection from the new album by Mike D. Thank you. This is It's Time on Exposure Radio X. It is Mike D with It's Time on Exposure Radio X. It's a selection from the new album, Thank You, your debut solo album. Mike is my guest tonight. And it seemed, Mike, as if it is the time for you to be making music. And it's exciting because we heard Switch Up, and there's a question in that song about where's it going to go? And it feels with this record that is quite a relevant question, just as It's Time seems relevant. It's like the time is now. What should we do? We can kind of do anything we like. That's the sense I get from their album.
Well, yes, there is that. And then also for me, I think for everybody, like as you age, your relationship to time changes because, mortality is real and we're going to run out of time. And so like that time that we do have is more precious. And we also, at least for me, it's like you're like the one thing I feel like I have a relation, I'm very lucky in my life of having sort of like an abundance of a lot of things, but time I have no control over. That's gonna play out as it plays out. What I do have control over is like I can try and manage my relationship with it as best as possible. So it's just like that. Yeah, you just become aware of the clicking, the whatever, the unstoppable.
Yeah, the ticking
nature,
clock.
The ticking of time, and then, and then I think along with that, too, along with time, that's like on say like what you're saying, like on Switch Up, where is it gonna go? Where are we gonna go? And then even on the song, It's Time, like I have like a lyric where I like don't want control, just want to be, because that's another part of. I don't know, maybe like getting a little bit older is then you realize like in time, we waste all this time trying to control things. And that actually takes us out of just being present to do the best thing that we could do. And so we're kind of like, I think we're all sort of like taught we're from an early age probably to try to like control what the outcome is, because that's basically our education system, right? Do this and then this will happen to you. It's pretty like basic, right?
Yeah.
Do this, fill out everything perfectly with your number 2 pencil, and wonderful things will happen to you
Yeah.
in life.
But you're suggesting that isn't necessarily the case. That you have
I wasn't very good at filling out the circles myself, but that's me.
So you booked time with your sons to record and use the studio for your own endeavours, and you naturally brought them into this activity.
Yeah, well, I'm technologically dependent. I'm their. Yeah, what's the term for that? Like they were like at one point as like my kids, they were my dependent. Now I'm their technological as a senior in the equation. I'm their technological dependent.
Right. So they know how everything works.
They know how everything works, including actually my old gear. Once in a while, there's like a trick that I'll remember to something, or like I'll be, oh, you got to move this tape head to that or something. Like there's something once in a while I'll earn my keep. But, you know, usually it's them be like, oh, Dad, no, the filter on this has to be, yeah. Even with old synthesis, they're like, oh, yeah, no, Dad, yeah, come on, look at where your oscillator is set to.
But do you quite enjoy that in a way?
Oh, yeah, it's a source of huge joy and pride, you know. But really because they love it and they're good at it and they work really hard at it. So that's like, so that's a huge thing. And it's just so much fun to make stuff with, you know, I feel very free in making stuff with them and with like the whole crew of people that we have around that was working on the album. There were a lot of different musicians and co-producers that really inspired me, that I just loved making music with. And actually the song It's Time I did with I started that with Eddie Richey, who's on the record, but he's also in the touring iteration of the 5D.
Yeah,
well.
with his son.
With his son, Milo, exactly.
Yeah, so there's this kind of father-son
both,
energy.
We have two father and son teams.
Yeah, which must be great in a way. I mean,
it's amazing. Yeah, it is great. And because it's like the kids, it just makes for like such, I don't know how else to say it, but it just makes for a great vibe.
Yeah, and so once you started making music, and how long did you spend? Did you think, right, you know, this is fun? And then when did you realize, oh, I'm gonna do something with this? And also, what were you aiming to do or what to create? You know, what kind of things?
I guess, like, in terms of there's the start that we talked about, and then I just sort of started to get a little bit more regular of, like, I would schedule time with Carter Lang, who I worked with a bunch on the record. Like, I'd be like, oh, make a time with Carter. Let's work on Monday. And then I'd kind of go, or Eddie, who I talked about, like, I'd keep going to people's studios or having them come to our studio and setting up times. And I think my favorite moments in the record, or the thing that made me really excited to keep making it, was like we would just get into these things. I'd sort of think of ideas either the night before, just even driving to the studio, like not really thinking too much, not really baking the idea too much, but just kind of coming up with these rough things like, oh, I want to make something that sounds like this. And maybe I'd have a musical reference, or maybe I would just be like, kind of say like almost a genre. Like we don't have anything on the record that sounds like a Zambian rock song. Like, let's do something like that. But we do. And then usually, so we just start with an idea. My favorite moments were when we would usually it would be like starting with a piece of equipment that was I wasn't very proficient. I'm not that proficient a musician to begin with. And so a lot of times I would start with pieces of gear that I wasn't too familiar with. And the second we'd get the sound, I think there's a lot of like our process where we just kind of fall in love with sound. Or that is a lot of what our process is like this. And once you have that, once that's happening, I think that's one of the beautiful things of working digitally is, and you can just be recording and go back and you see, oh, that's where it is. That's the sound that we're in love with. And now let's build the whole song around that. And so then we would have a lot of days where we'd start like late morning or midday and didn't even look up until sort of like around dinner time. And
Yeah.
then we'd be like, oh, wow, we kind of have a song here. There's some ideas here. So that was the first part. What was the next
I guess
question after that?
one of the questions was about what you wanted to get out of it. What were you aiming for?
Oh, well, yeah. And then so then I think at the beginning I just wanted to make songs. And I wasn't like, I wasn't even completely fixated on releasing them or I hadn't totally decided in sort of the how or why or if even it would come out. And then as we went along, I was like, oh no, I'm a much happier version of myself being engaged working on music, and also the world is a completely seemingly crazy place and I seem to have no control over the current slate of world events right now.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can control is kind of is going in and making music with these people. And so then I was just like, all right, I'm definitely dedicated to doing this, but wasn't sure what. And then at a certain point, we just kind of had enough songs where I was like, all right, we could keep going forever making. I didn't want to be that person that's just like, oh yeah, I've got hard drives filled up with all these songs that never see the light of the day. I was like, all right, we need to actually start finishing things. But I also had that that wasn't an unfamiliar place to me. That was something that, like with the band with Adam and Adam, there were many times we had to sort of stop ourselves in a way in terms of creating to be like, all right, now let's start finishing. So anyway, we kind of made that. I made that decision of like, all right, I kind of gathered everybody and was like, we're going to go to Shangri-La to Rick Rubin's studio because we could have stayed at our home studio, but I was like, I wanted to go to a place where there would be no distractions of home and that I'd just really be not only totally focused on the music, but I wanted to be able to have like different rooms going because I knew there was a lot of vocals I wanted to redo. So that was going to kind of take over sort of like a vocal booth and the control room. And then, but while that was going on, Carter and Ty, who worked a lot on my record, they were sort of doing, I guess I would call it and they were set up in the live room where they sort of almost set up their own mix room where they were doing pre-mixes on stuff, but that almost does a disservice to what they were doing because it was very creative. Like they were really helping to finish songs. But then I didn't want to let go. I wasn't ready yet to let go of the process of making things. So then in what is the living room of the studio, we set up a whole nother studio that was more like how our studio is at home with like a whole bunch of different synths and a DJ setup and couple of different guitar stations, a bass station, and then everything all wired in, ready to go all the time. So we could, while we were finishing things in 2 rooms, then we had another room where we were making new things. So actually, like Switch Up on the record started as a new idea at Shangri-La when we were finishing other ideas.
Right. So, but that was the time when you started to get serious about this project.
Yeah.
When you went to Shangri-La, it's like,
yeah,
and this was last year, I'm assuming.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I was like, a year ago from this past spring.
Yeah.
And that was, and it's a funny thing too when you kind of commit in that way and you're actually spending money on something. It's different when you're in your home studio. You can kind of just like keep going, and it's a beautiful thing. But you don't. You're not like. I needed to have that thing of like having to put pressure on myself to finish it. So the goal was to actually finish an album's worth of songs, and we did not achieve the goal in the 2 weeks we had, but we did get a lot of songs a lot closer. And then it took some like concerted like follow up weeks spread out over a few months to really finish everything at my house. And then it was still kind of with this idea of like, oh, let's see, now we have these songs that I like. Let's see how they work together. And I was still like, oh, this is great. I don't have any expectation. I'm not worried about what happens. You know, I don't care about what happens when I put it out in the world. And then I remember there was like vividly, there was a day I rang up my therapist and my talk therapist, and I was like, oh, I realized something and I'm having a hard time with it. And she's like, oh, well, what is it? What's going on? And I was like, I realized I do care what people think.
That's interesting.
Like I was sort of like in that beautiful place. It's great when you're making stuff and you're like, I don't care, I'm just doing this. But then there is a certain point when you commit to putting it out into the world, you realize like, oh, I'm going to care. You know, if I'm being honest, like I'm going to care if what people love it, hate it, are indifferent to it.
Yeah.
You know?
But then in a way, maybe that helps you also get more clarity about what you want to do, in the sense that, you know, if you start to realize, oh, I do kind of care maybe what my old fans like or don't like about what I'm doing now. And maybe I do care about how this sits within the landscape that I pay attention to and I'm still involved in various different ways. You know, that's quite, did that help to have that moment?
Well, it's funny, actually, for me, I wasn't so much, I didn't want to think, or I didn't choose to think about like say Beastie Boys fans, in the sense that like I just kind of accepted like, well, they might, I could give them reasons why I think they might like what I'm making, but I'm also understand that maybe they don't, because maybe they were a certain age when that music came out, and that's always going to have a certain importance to them, and I can't really compete with that, right? So I have to sort of accept that, and then I guess we always think, at least for myself, I think about like some of the newer music that I do like, and just hoping that maybe some people who like some of the weird bands that I like would like what I'm making. But I think that's always how I've been. That's all. I mean, that was the start of it, even when we were teenagers and we were listening to like post-punk and then hardcore bands, and then listening to rap music, is like we just wanted to desperately to be like these things and be heard in these musical worlds that we loved so much and were so immersed in.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So many different things going on at this point. We're going to keep you here a bit longer. I'm going to try and stop hitting the microphone with my hands. I'm going to play another track.
That's usually my job.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, usually I find I'm the clumsy one.
Right.
I tend to hit the mic with my hand.
Stop waving.
So thank you for taking that over today.
Yeah, I'll take on that responsibility. I'll play What We Got, and then we'll take a break. So this is Mike D with What We Got on Exposure Radio X. It is Mike D with Make It Stop on Exposure Radio X. I'm John Kennedy, and Mike D is my guest tonight, giving us some insight into the new album, Thank You, the debut solo album by Mike D, which is a kind of powerful and important sounding phrase, I think, the debut solo album. Is that heavy to you?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking, as you were saying that, I was like, oh, why am I not completely comfortable with this?
We don't need to couch it in those terms, but it's interesting, isn't it? For somebody who has an amazing reputation, an amazing legacy, and it seems to me that you've kind of had a fairly carefree time in the last kind of 20 years, where you've concentrated on raising a family and kind of living in the moment and enjoying new different challenges. I've read that you're a keen surfer. You've mentioned surfing already in the conversation. Different things. And to go back to what you were most known for is an interesting thing. And I remember a few years ago, Soft Play Slaves were in, and they were talking about the album that you made with them, and it was exciting to think that you were involved in that and making music again. And then that's a few years ago now, so it kind of, there was no further news. And then suddenly it was quite a nice surprise this year to hear Switch Up and see that Mike D was not only back, but then 2 weeks later put out another new track, and then suddenly there were all these live shows announced, and you're popping up playing in some interesting places, from roller skate venues and to working men's clubs in the north of England and all this kind of stuff. It was really exciting, and I think that in a way you've been enjoying having fun with both making the music and presenting it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And actually, it's funny because I didn't have like some kind of master plan, but I did have I had the sort of like gut feeling like, all right, it was a little daunting of thinking in a digital world, right? This is new to me in terms of like my whole entire life and career with the band. We had the luxury of still, even though we were crossing over into digital world, we were still in the era of selling CDs and whatever. And so it's kind of daunting, just the idea for me of like, all right, you're releasing something. It seems like things in the digital world come and go. Nobody has time for anything because everybody is constantly barraged with everything. Getting back to the it's time thing, right? Because none of us, our time is now sort of, I don't know if it's hijacked is the right word. Our time is very occupied now, I think, and it's very normal to fill up space where there used to be space, because with digital, you can fill every waking second with something. And actually the opposite, it's even, or more than that, you're constantly getting tempted to not do nothing. You're constantly getting tempted to, oh, look at this. Oh, click on that. Oh, give this a listen. Oh, watch this for a second.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of that I think makes us maybe, I don't know, it's funny to me. I think there's a lot of that makes us not feel or not connect with other humans as much as possible. I guess we'll see over time. But anyway, it was intimidating, the idea of releasing something in this digital world where a very likely reality might be that you put it out there and a few streams get listened to by a few times by a few people, and then after that it's just crickets, and that's it, and then move on and then make something else, and and so I was just like, all right, well, let's just, the way I know how to connect, or that I feel like we could connect with people, is like, let's release a song, but let's release a song into a world. Let's make our own world where we release a song and then play a few shows, and then a few weeks or a month later, let's do that over again, and then let's do that over again. And we did that. We did LA, and we did New York, and we did here in the UK, and each thing kind of corresponded with like a track, and then playing a few shows. And and then I guess I sort of then built from there of like, all right, well, let's, instead of playing in venues where people are so used to going all the time, and that comes with a whole set of expectations, let's play in a place where people are like, what? Where are they playing? What is this thing? What is happening? So it just, I think it helps open things up, or just changes the equation totally, where people are walking in and they're like, I don't know what's going on or where I am, but let's see what's going to happen. And so I don't know, it was great. And then in the end, as now that we're in it and we've been doing it for some bit, it's like, it's gratifying as I realize ultimately, like, at least where we're at now, we're at, Eddie, Milo, Will, myself, Davis, and Skylar, like all of us in our weird mixed up family collaborative thing that's happening on stage, we're enjoying it immensely. And it seems like the audience is kind of like, that's like their big takeaway, or that's the thing that's very tangible for them, which feels pretty cool.
It seems really exciting because it's there's an aesthetic to the way that the band have been presented to the world, the matching colours, and it seems very much like a gang. And I think in a way that seems like a nice position for you to be in that it is maybe Mike D with 5D, but it is 5D. No, it's this group, and that's what you come from, and that's where you probably feel happiest. And it's nice that has been organically created. There's just kind of emerged from the different interactions between ultimately your friends and your family, and the natural way that you have of kind of sharing these experiences.
Yeah.
And now you're taking that to a stage which is really exciting because there's more to come.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
More shows.
Um,
And eventually more music.
Yeah, excellent. Well, this is good news. So I'm going to play Here We Are, which is one of my favorites. And I think it's a good illustration of just how each track kind of goes on a journey. You know, it starts off one way and ends up a completely different way. You know, and it's really interesting. So let's have a listen to that. This is Mike D with Here We Are on Exposure Radio X. This is Mike D taking us on a journey with Here We Are from the album Thank You, which is out now. Mike is my guest tonight, giving us some insight into the new record and also the new world that you've created for yourself as Mike D out there. Once again, musician, performer, etc. It's exciting. Is it exciting? Is it living up to what you had hoped would happen by doing this again?
Yeah, I think it's actually. I mean, if I'm honest, it's surpassing it in terms of just the joy level that we're getting to have, and that also it's nice in life to be able to like. Everything has challenges, but it's nice to also feel like, all right, I feel okay with dealing with some of the challenges that are headed our way in terms of communication with each other, communication with the world at large, just navigating it all. But can I talk about Here We Are for 1 second?
Please do, yeah.
Since we were just listening to it. And maybe this is more for like your more in-depth show, but it was funny because that you're talking about songs that take you on a journey. That song, in terms of making it, it started. I remember like Carter came over to my house. It was just him and I when we started, and I just had this idea of like, all right, let's make something. I wanted to make something that was like at like a footwork tempo, like a 150, 160, DJ Rashad, like very up tempo place, and that was the basis. But then so we started doing that. But then I started to kind of like just do rough verses over it, but nothing felt like I wasn't feeling totally genuine or comfortable in what my flow was. And then we went back and we started adding musical elements onto it. And so then the vocal I ended up in this totally other place. And then in trying to finish it, it was like hard for me, like on that vocal, it wasn't like a comfortable place. Like it was like if there's one song on the record where I feel like I really had to kind of like suffer or struggle with a bit to finish, it's Here We Are. But then it's one of those ones where it was very gratifying because like once it's sort of the answers started to emerge and I started to hear like the mixes started to sound more right on it, it was like I felt it was gratifying because I was like I literally didn't think I was going to be capable of it. So it was really nice that somehow in this process of all of us working together, that was the thing that came out of it. Oh, and to give also a shout out to Derek Ali, Mixed by Ali, who mixed the record because he's a very well known hip hop record mixer, and he's done absolutely huge, worldwide huge records that he's mixed for like Kendrick Lamar and SZA and all kinds of other people, but Nipsey Hussle. But what was great about the combination with him is like I feel like we have this like chaos, like the sessions we would give him were pretty chaotic. Like that's just how we worked. Like there's a lot of tracks and it took a while to figure out the process in working with him because I think there's a lot of tracks that he would solo that if you solo them, they just sound like noise, but they actually are part of a collective whole that's necessary. So he was a great match for us because he would really kind of clean up like the chaos a bit and make it work. And then at first he started to take too much stuff out and it was too reductive. And then he realized he started to kind of like tap in and understand our method and understand how you had to sort of like, he had his method for reducing everything down and making everything work. But then he'd start to add back in some of these tracks that when you solo them sound like total absolute noise. he started to add those back in and realize, like, oh, okay, there's something here. I need that. This makes the musical whole.
Yeah, yeah. I really like the noisy elements on the record, and there's lots of things that pop up, and you notice each time you play it. It's as if you hear a new thing in there, because you've got these moments which could be, like samples from an easy listening record or something. There are different eras that are brought up, but then there's kind of overriding noises which you think, well, what on earth created that? And you kind of bring them together in a really kind of great whole. And it's really interesting to see how songs like "Here We Are" challenging you and stretching you and making you think, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And it's almost as if when you venture into those territories, then you start making things that are really exciting and provide and bring something completely different to what Mike D is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that was, for me, what was so much fun working on one of the many things working on the project was just, getting these sounds from all over, and the gratification of making somehow them all working together. I mean, I think it does make sense. Like if somebody has like listened to the radio show I was doing for a while, like Echo Chamber, like I do feel like I figured out a way to sort of like work in all of these different kinds of influences that I do have, and hopefully make them work together.
Yeah. Do you think your sons had an influence on the sound of the record with their own band, Very Nice Person, and the kind of things that they're exploring with that? Do you think that fed back into this?
Yeah, 100%. Like I think definitely, especially with with both of them, but so in the case of my older son with Davis, there's some of the songs on my record that actually have his harmonies, because he has the kid has a voice of an angel, which I do not. He does have this beautiful high voice. So there's he's very Beach Boys obsessed. I mean, we all are, but like he's really one of those people who's listened to like the complete like Smile sessions and gone in and dissected every track and thought about tried to learn and copy the vocal arranging on things. And so he brings a lot of that in, and he's a really good producer of my vocals. And then Skylar is very like he's great in terms of, because I was talking about the chaos that I tend to work in, but he's very organized. Like he happily works in that, and then he's good at like kind of helping kind of police and go through and figure out what do we have to prioritize, and just in terms of the sonics, sometimes there's room for everything and sometimes there's not, and you have to kind of pick your moments.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in tonight. It's great to have you here. I'm going to play one more song and I'm going to let you go. So I thought I'd play Thank You, which is the title track of the album. It also closes the record. And in a way, it seems the most reflective song on the album. Almost, there's no other nostalgia. If this is nostalgia, but it seems reflective. About I don't know what you're talking about, but different things come to mind. How did this come about? What does the song mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, first up, I don't know what I'm talking about either, and I hope that the record reflects that. So there's that. But then there's I actually think, I mean, there are, I wouldn't say, I'm not trying to correct you, but I would say I wouldn't choose nostalgic.
Right.
I actually, I'm a little phobic of nostalgia.
Yeah, no, I thought you might be, but it was.
So I wouldn't even say nostalgic, as like I would say it's reflective.
Yeah.
But it's there's reflection in there, but then it's also very emotionally, it's very much like my present reality. So it's a kind of like a combination of, I am talking about things in I'm talking about growing up in New York City and being in the club, and like my group of friends, which definitely included Adam, and that, we were these kids going out and living this life in downtown New York City. But then I'm also like all the emotion is really this like present day of everything that I'm sort of thankful for. And that also includes being able to make that song, because that's another song where I didn't really, going into this record, like prior to this record, I wouldn't have imagined I would have been capable of making that song. So it's kind of like a cool thing to when you get in a place, and then you all of a sudden you've done it. We did that. So, yeah, that was that. Anyway, that's the song.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, I mean, with that line,
Oh, and I
we
meant-
were just kids, you know. It
Yeah,
does
yeah.
seem, I mean, and when you know, look back and check information, and to think that the band Beastie Boys started when you were 14 or something like that, and you really were just a
Well, 15, but
15.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But who's counting?
Yeah. But it's amazing, isn't it, to think that, you know, how far that went as like a kind of bit of fun with your friends. You know?
Well, I think also, I guess I don't say it, I don't spell it out in that song, but it was also like, it was kind of like a dangerous world, right? I mean, it was a beautiful world, this downtown New York City club world, in terms of you had like this, all these different emergent musics happening in the same club or at different clubs, all within a short distance of each other in downtown New York City in the 80s at this point, right? Because you had all of this like post-punk kind of like only in New York City, like ESG, conk, like liquid kind of stuff. And then you'd have like Paradise Garage, where like it was like the beginning of dance music over there. And then Danceteria, you had like all the bands I was talking about, but then also bands from the UK that would come over, like Public Image Limited or Gang of Four or whatever, and they'd be coming through New York. And then you had hardcore, and then you had the beginning of rap music, and that was all happening in these clubs. So it was all exciting. But then at the same time, you know, it didn't come without a price. Like we had this incredible freedom at a very young age, and like there were a lot of friends that didn't handle it that well. And then actually the impact, like AIDS was like this brand new thing that happened in the New York City club scene that was a devastating and really kind of scary thing, because we were teenagers and we didn't understand. Like it was, you know, people that we knew from clubs were all of a sudden, you know, getting ill and dying. And that was just like, you know, and it wasn't just that alone. Like you had this guy like Michael Stewart, who was like more an artist, but he somehow got like literally beaten to death. But it was like a police brutality thing. And, you know, he got labeled a graffiti artist, but he really wasn't. And he just, you know, anyway, there was like a lot, it was a hectic time in New York City, and not everybody survived. And there was a lot of tragedy. And so I think that's also part of what, you know, I guess in reflection, I'm kind of like thankful for, is that somehow with my really good friends, we made it out and we got to be in a band together and do all this stuff for all these decades, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And as a native New Yorker who lives in California, where is home? And what do you think of yourself now in terms of place, or, you know, are you a Californian now?
That's a good. Yeah, I don't totally feel comfortable saying Californian, but I do feel like California is my home. I do, in terms of like just when I think of like studio and family and, you know, and everything, and, you know, access to the ocean and everything, and the great luxury of being able to be outdoors and in nature. Like I think of that is, for me, is in California. New York, I think, is very much my root and where I come from, and still can be a muse in a way, or can still be like this beautiful place, but that I kind of like to sort of more visit than live.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
But I actually, to give a shout out, London, in a lot of ways, like now serves for me as some of my New York kind of inspiration, because because I don't know London, you know, New York is always going to be like first. I just know it without having to open my eyes. Like from getting to point A to point B, I know exactly where to get on the subway. I know which car I need to be in the subway because of where I'm going to get off. I know where I'm going to cross the street. I know where I'm going to get a cab. I know all those things. London, I don't really. I have to really think about those things. So I kind of, in a good way, I walk around and in London with this, like, in this daze of not really knowing and not even feeling like I have to totally figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So some excitement of it, exploring a place
Yeah.
that, in a way, brings back some of those city feelings. Fantastic, Mike. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for coming in. I'm so pleased there is a Mike D record out there, and you suggested that there's the first of many. Which, fingers crossed that all goes according to plan.
Yeah, as long as it's still fun.
Yeah, exactly. A very good rule of thumb. Here's the last selection tonight then from Thank You. It is the title track. This is Mike D with Thank You on Exposure Radio X.
Radio X.